So Ben, how did you feel when you found out that your ex had actually met up with your mum? What was your feelings on that?
I was confused and a little bit. I don't know if disappointed is a word, and I'll explain why. But I was a bit confused because it was kind of like she was telling me that I couldn't talk to her family, right? Not that I wanted to talk to her family a lot, but she had got grumpy about the fact that I'd reached out to her family about her being unwell. Now, to be fair, in hindsight, I can understand that because I realised that she probably would have seen that as an invasion of her privacy to a degree, and also to the fact that I say inadvertently. Obviously, I did do it on purpose, but not in a malicious intent. Not with a malicious intent. I had, as we would have covered, I had a valid reason for reaching out to her family out of pure concern for her. So I felt it was justified, and I didn't think it was wrong. But I understand how she would have taken that as personal, a little bit personally, right? I get that, totally get that in hindsight. But the ironic part was I was baffled because I'm like, you're telling me that I can't talk to your family, but you're happy to contact my family. So I was a bit, I don't know if the word translates, but I was a bit miffed because I was kind of like, this is, not angry, but just a bit like, oh, okay, rightio. Bit weird that you reached out to my family. I felt like she could have come. The thing that got me is I felt like she could have come to me if she wanted to return my stuff. She could have contacted me directly, and she could have been like, "Where do I post it to at minimum?" Okay, which is kind of what she did to my mum. She's like, "Where can I post it to?" But she could have come through me. She's got my phone number. She had been emailing me the whole time. I was a little bit confused as to why she bypassed me and go to my family or to my mum. And I have my sort of, I don't want to get into it too much on you here because for the length of the podcast, but I have my sort of feelings as to maybe why. I felt like maybe she was trying to she knew my mum liked her and she likes my mum, they're friendly, and they're on good terms and there was no bad blood between them. So I kind of felt like maybe she was trying to reconnect with my family to a degree, to maybe feel out where my mum was at with her in terms of the breakup, and whether my mum sort of, dare I say, hated her, which is the way she would probably put it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Ben, that there is another element to consider, and I don't want to go down this route of making you feel any more anxiety, which I know you suffer from, when we're trying to consider all of the options. But when we're considering everything else that's at play right now, one of the things which really stands out to me is the fact she doesn't want you at her property, at her house, unless she gives specific kind of, you can be here at this time, at this day, and, a lot of control on the situation. If she reached out to you and said, I want you to collect your clothes, you perhaps would have said, right, I can get to your house at this time. And she's probably thinking, I don't want Ben involved. Even though I'm emailing him fairly frequently. I don't want him involved knowing I want him to take his clothes because he might just come on his own accord. And I don't want that. And this, I suppose, connects with everything. The illnesses, the fact it's just email all the time and nothing more, the sister and the suspicions, all of this adding together, this mystery about whether or not there's perhaps somebody else in the background. The fact that she seems to be trying to keep you away, even though she's also trying to bring you closer. She's trying to balance this in a fairly unusual way, where she's reaching out to you regularly, but she's keeping everything so distant and, dare I say, cold, certainly sterile. It is something else to consider. Did she not tell you about the clothes because she didn't want you to just turn up and collect them?
That was highly, so I don't disagree with you, and I totally understand where you're coming from, 100%, and I don't reject anything that you just said, not by any stretch of the imagination. What I will say is that was highly unlikely because I would have to travel. As I said, like the trip is from where I was living to where she was living at the time. We're talking about 50 k's by public transport. So I would have to basically get 2 trains. I'd have to get like a minimum 2 trains and a bus to get there. So the idea of me going to her house willy nilly without it being arranged prior, like without me actually contacting her and going, "Hey, I'll come down at this time," would never have happened. I get where you're coming from, but here's the thing I look at with that is the question for me is why did she not just contact me direct and say, okay, what's your new address? Where do I post these clothes to? Because I had moved house and she was aware that I'd moved house, but she didn't know my address. It would have been really simple, I think, for her to either email me at bare minimum or text me direct, which looks like it was going to be the least likely. But in any case, it would have been pretty easy for her to just go, okay, what's your address? I'll just put these in the mail. So I'm not saying that she went out of her way to go to my mum's house. I think that was somewhat coincidental in a way because my mum invited her over. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself and say that she actively took advantage of that situation, but I do feel it takes a little bit of commitment to travel up minimum 30 k's to take a shirt and a pair of jeans to my mum and then sit down there and have a cup of tea or coffee. But it wasn't going to happen that I just willy-nilly rock up at her house. And the other weird thing about that was when I first heard back from her sister said to me in amongst her message, she said, I'm going to query her about, I'm going to talk to her about, the health situation, right? Understandably. I'm going to ask her to meet up was what her sister said. And then her sister comes back and tells me that she had basically made out, like my ex had implied at minimum, I'm paraphrasing, but basically implied that I was stalking her, which is categorically not true. And I actually laughed at it because I'm like, I didn't say this to the sister, but I'm sitting there thinking, I'm not going to go to her house at 9:30 at night when she finishes work, because she finishes work at 9 and she's minimum half an hour after that to get home. Go by public transport for 2 hours or near on, an hour and a half minimum, and then sit there outside her house for her to rock up at 9:30 and then get back on public transport and come all the way home at God knows what time of night. So I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole with that, but that whole scenario of me doing anything of the sort just doesn't make any sense, no logical sense. But I take on board what you're getting at.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating, intriguing story with so many ups, downs, and twists. And as we progress, I mean, we're not actually at the end where we are right now, even if it is, whether it is the end. But moving forward from the fact that your clothes, but you did want them back. We need to just bear in mind these are not a pair of socks. Like, these were expensive clothes. You did need them back. But the way it happened was somewhat strange. What happened from then on in, Ben?
So basically after that, then I would still get random reaching out. So I can't remember exactly what month of the year that was that she took those clothes to my mum's house, but it was... She reached out for my birthday last year. She reached out for my birthday this year. She reached out for Christmas, and I kind of want to bring this forward a little bit for you. But she would reach out for special occasions. So she'd reach out for Christmas 2022. There'd been one or two social media interaction stuff happened all the way from July through till December of last year. And Christmas basically was the last time that she did that as of last year. And then what I did was, because it was within a couple of weeks of her reaching out at Christmas, initially I responded. I did all that, but I didn't sort of push anything, and I didn't ask to meet again, because I was at the point where I'm like, I've asked, by that point, by Christmas, I had asked 3 or 4 times to meet up and been told no every single time for whatever reason. And I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. She needs to be the one that asked me to meet up going forward, and that was my attitude. And so one of my friends convinced me to reach out to her after Christmas, because I did respond to her at Christmas, and she said, Merry Christmas, I hope your family are well. And I've responded, I said the same thing. I replied with the same kind of thing. And she'd done that at the end of Christmas Day, right? This was like nighttime. And I just purposely not initiated that contact because I had a feeling it was coming. And I'm like, I'll wait and see. I'm not sitting there waiting, but I was like, it might be coming because it's been pretty consistent with special occasions. And to move along, so basically I reached out in January, and January was the last time that I asked to meet up. And one of my friends suggested to me, just reach out and say, why don't we take the dog out, right? Something casual. So I did that, and I got told she didn't have a car. She'd had a bit of a accident, and her car was in the mechanics. And so I took that on board as being the truth. And then, it just sort of continued on from there, and there was just these random reach outs all the way up until my birthday was the last reach out of 2023 this year, so not that long ago. And then the last social media interaction that she had with me of her own accord was on July 29th, which was only a little bit over 2 months ago, basically.
So as far as you're aware, Ben, is your ex single? Is there any evidence either way? Because her behaviour is certainly showcasing somebody who wants you in her life, but only to a certain degree. She reaches out consistently or a good number of times over the last 18 months. And every time you suggest to meet up, she declines it for one excuse or another. And, I completely understand why you got to the stage of not wanting to ask anymore and thinking maybe she should be doing it. I do suggest that after a few messages, maybe you respond and you actually ask, would you like to meet up? But ultimately, if she keeps declining you, I completely respect you getting tired of this pattern and you're thinking, why are you doing this? But then when she's not asking to meet up and your friend is saying, hey, why don't you reach out? You reach out, you ask to meet, and once again, there is an excuse. It builds a picture that she wants you within her life as almost like a pen friend and nothing more. Is she gaining something from this connection that is enough for her? Does she have somebody else in the background? These are the things we're asking ourselves right now. And I believe for your own mental health, Ben, it's probably important to focus on making new connections. And I don't know what the future holds between your ex reaching out to you, but if your mental health is being affected by her constantly reaching out, her constantly rejecting you meeting up, then, and I don't say this lightly, but you may need to consider blocking her, because I think this is preventing you from moving forward with your life. This has been a good chunk of time. We're talking a couple of years or so. And there seems to be sadly very little progress. And although I would never say never, and although I've seen crazy situations arise, normally that is maybe 2 or 3 years of no contact, then somebody reaches out, then there's a reconnection. What we're talking about here is fairly regular communication that leads to nowhere. And although I believe you can grow breadcrumbs, I strongly believe you can grow a small breadcrumb into something magnificent. When it comes to this stage of so many reach outs, the things that have happened in between when you went to her house, the clothes being given to your mum instead of you, the emails, the illnesses, and now her saying that she can't meet up again when you last reached out. I mean, what are your thoughts, Ben? And is there any evidence that there could be somebody in the background?
Vincent, I'm really glad you asked that question. I'm really thrilled that you asked that question, and I'll tell you why. Because I got to be honest, as much as everyone says don't do this, of course I did this. So I did look at her social media. I'll be fair, I did. I didn't interact with it. I purposely didn't interact with it. I put no comments on anything. I put no likes on anything. I did none of that. But because I was like, where's what's going on? Where's everything at? And I was sort of left with, and okay, there's Break, but I was left with that big question mark of like, I gotta be honest, am I being played was one of them. and the other one was like, what the hell happened kind of thing. So, it's not like I had no idea. I mean, obviously I've covered a lot of it in our conversation, but, potential reasons why we broke up and stuff like that. And a lot of stuff came out in the wash in hindsight in the communications, and I went, oh, aha, right, I was right about that in terms of her motivations for breaking up, etc. But to answer your question, so I had watched her social media. I hadn't liked anything. Like I said, no interaction at all. I'm really active on Facebook. Facebook is my main platform. I'm not really big on Instagram. I do have an Instagram account. It is a business account. I do very little on that. I do very little on it, but it's all business related. But my point being is that there was nothing from my side that would indicate to her at all that I was looking at her social media. Having said that, there was no indication whatsoever that there was any other guy in the picture in that whole time, okay? But here's where it kind of gets interesting. And I know we spoke about this. So when I reached out to her a couple of weeks ago, it was about 3 weeks ago now. It was the 9th of this month, so whatever that is right now. What's that, 20 odd days? This was just prior to me last speaking to you, as you know. And I spoke to a coach online, and they convinced me to reach out, and they convinced me that no contact was not the way to go in this situation, right? So once again, I took their advice, right or wrong. That's what I did. I've drafted an email, I've reached out, and she's come back to me, and I did, and basically what I said was to the effect of, kept it really positive. I'm like, we've had a good couple of years to kind of grow as individuals, and I just think that it would be a real strength, and I'd like to kind of give this a go again and meet up with you. And I didn't lay it on thick. I didn't think I did, but it was along those lines. And she comes back with a response. Ben, unfortunately, this is not something that I wish to pursue anymore. I've met someone. I've started seeing someone recently, and I've moved on. And I'm still, as much as this sounds insane, I'm still a little bit on the suspicious side of that, because there was a couple of posts on her Instagram that were kind of love-hearty type of stuff, and they were like, I won't get too detailed here, but basically they were like, what do you call them, emojis, or bitmojis, or whatever you call them, like the avatars. And I saw a couple pop up over the space of a couple of days, and one was like a dog with love hearts, and the other one was a picture of her avatar with her holding her hands in a love heart shape. When I saw the dog one, I sort of went, I had this like feeling of dread. I don't know why. I don't believe in, I don't believe in psychics and all that sort of stuff, so if people do, great, but I don't. So I didn't really think that's what it was, but I just had this weird feeling of dread. I'm like, that's different. But I left it go because I thought, it's got to do with her dog. And she posted a lot of stuff about the dog. And then, like, the next day or a day or two later, I see this one of her with, her emoji with a love heart shape. And I was like, oh, okay, this doesn't look good, right? And I didn't want to read into it too much, so I sort of let it slide. But there was nothing on there from any guy. There was nothing on there that indicated there was any guy involved. I think she might have liked some guy, but other than that, no indication anywhere. And then she tells me she's seeing someone. So I kind of have to take that at face value and go, okay, that is the case, I can't deny that. I just have to go, yeah, okay, that's the story. I got to believe that. But the weird part about it is since that happened, there's been no indication whatsoever of any guy on anything. When her and I were together, she was pretty quick to want to post about us being together. And I know it's early days, but I'm guessing that this has happened somewhere between the 29th of July and a week or two ago, or the 9th of September, basically. So it's a good, 20-odd day period. But in any case, there's nothing to indicate that there's another third party involved, but she has categorically stated that she's seeing someone. So I kind of just have to roll with that and consider that to be true.
I'm so sorry, Ben, that you received that message, that confirmation, you could say. But is it confirmation? Is it true? Or is it lies? And I think that is for the people who are listening to give their thoughts as well. Please let me know in the YouTube comments whether you think Ben's ex has been telling truths or lies throughout this whole saga. Going back on what you just said, so Ben spoke to another coach before he contacted me who suggested he wrote this letter. Now, this isn't, something that I would have necessarily have suggested he did, but he did that, he made that choice, and we now have this response. Now, is it a truthful response, which is providing a level of closure, or is it a response through some level of frustration about receiving the letter? I mean, we don't know for certain. There's certainly suspicions throughout the whole situation post-breakup, and you've listened to many instances of when we are questioning whether Ben's ex is telling the truth or is lying. So, like I said, those of you listening, please let me know in YouTube comments what you think about these elements. What I would say is, but right now, unfortunately, it's almost irrelevant. In my opinion, this is a situation which is unhealthy for Ben's mental health. As I said a little while ago, I believe it's holding him back. I believe it's affecting his anxiety, and I believe it is preventing him from living his best life with somebody who can be more authentic with him. Now, I'm not here to say that Ben's ex was lying about everything, but I would be very surprised if she was telling the truth about everything. Again, you can make your own conclusions. But whatever we believe on this, Ben has now received contact to basically say, I've met somebody, I have moved on. Whether she really has, whether she has and it was really recent, whether she had and it was a year and a half ago, for me, it's almost irrelevant. For me now, we have to take on board what has been said, and Ben needs to consider what he needs to do to protect his mental health. Does he need to block his ex? I don't say that lightly, but it's something I think he needs to consider. Because if he doesn't, there could be further contact. And where is this further contact going to take Ben? Is he going to get his ex back at this stage? Is it even worth wanting to get his ex back? Because is his ex even the type of person which Ben should actually be wanting to be with? Yes, he's in love with her, but is she good for him? Again, these are thoughts and opinions that you will have. Share them in the comments. But what I have and what I believe is that Ben needs to move forward and find somebody even better than his ex. I think maybe blocking is the correct option to prevent any further intriguing things coming through which prevent Ben from moving forward. Now, I'm not here to say that Ben has to do this. Ben is his own man. Ben will make his own choice. But what I would be very fearful of is that this time next year, Ben has not met somebody else and instead is waiting around. Maybe he's had a few messages here and there, even during 2024. We don't know for certain. But my advice to Ben is to move forward, make new connections, learn the lessons, and maybe to help your mental health, maybe you actually need to block her. I'm so sorry that it's come to this kind of end. But I'll leave you with the last few words, Ben. I mean, how do you feel about what I've just said, and where's your mind at right now?
I don't disagree with anything that you just said, but at all. The hard part is it's confusing, and I want to keep this pretty succinct. But basically, there was a couple of points during this 2-year period where I just started to get myself back to normal, and then I got prodded, which is what I'm calling it. Reminds me of the old Facebook posts, as I said to you before. But basically, like, I was getting myself back on track, and then I get this, interaction from her, or a reach out more so. Just depends what it was at the time. So it kind of set me back a bit on a couple of occasions where I just started to sort of get myself back into a good mental space, and just, really, like, I was in the frame of mind of, if she comes back, great. If she doesn't, then I'm okay. I think the hard part is, and I'm not going to get emotional about it, because I've kind of passed that to a degree, But I think the part that really hit me was I didn't have any confirmation that there was anyone else in the picture for this whole 2-year period. So, I don't know if there was or wasn't, but I'll give her the benefit of the doubt and say that, like, at minimum, she didn't jump into a rebound relationship, which ironically might have even been a better scenario for me, but, she didn't do that. So I respect her for that. But I think the confirmation through that email was kind of like just I don't want to make it sound dramatic and say the final nail in the coffin, but it was kind of like it was, because it was kind of like the confirmation of, hey, there's now someone else involved, and now she's basically categorically telling me I've moved on, which was a bit of a sucker punch. So it kind of broke my heart all over again, to be fair, but like I'm not like, I'm in a good place at the moment. Like, I'm not in a bad place mentally or anything, and my mental health and stuff, my anxiety is, under control. It's come a long way in the last 2 years. But what I was going to get to is I'm not disagreeing at all with what you're saying about blocking. I will tell you why I've hesitated to do that for this whole time, was because I saw that personally as an emotional response. And I thought, if I go and block her on everything, especially early on, of course I shut the door. But at the same time, it was also I didn't want to give her any emotional response to, apart from the initial communications, I didn't want to be doing tit for tat kind of, hey, I blocked you, I got you, not saying that's what you're suggesting. I'm just saying that was my mentality. I don't want to show her an emotional response by blocking her on stuff. And that was really what the main thing about it was. So one of my things is, in a nutshell, is that and I'm not blowing my trumpet here, so to speak, I'm someone that's very I've been through quite a bit in my life, and I've learned to really analyze stuff. And I know a lot of people do that, but the point that I want to make is I beat myself up about, or I have in the last 2 years, about my shortcomings and about where I went wrong. And I think part of my thing is that I analysed what happened with her and I a lot. And the reason I wanted to bring this up was because I just think it's important to point out that sometimes you've got to try not to, or try to get to the point where you don't beat yourself up about your part. You kind of take... so I've kind of got to the point right now where I've looked at it in the last 2 days, and I haven't gone back over emails or anything, but I've just looked at it and thought about it and gone, you know what? I've given her every single explanation for everything that she's asked about or brought up as being issues between us, and I have addressed them, and I have apologized when I needed to and when I was at fault, but I'm past the point now of apologizing for anything. And it wasn't like I was apologizing all the time, but I'm saying I've addressed issues that I know were issues with her and stuff that she's mentioned, but I'm not beating myself up anymore, because I'm at the point where I'm like, you know what? I've covered it. I couldn't cover it. I couldn't give her any other answers, because I've given her the same answers each time those particular points are brought up. But the point I want to make is that hopefully your listeners will get to the point where, once they've addressed the problems in the relationship early on and taken accountability for those and laid that out, they don't need to do that again and again, because that's where you can really beat yourself up and analyze it and get yourself into a pretty horrible mind frame by going, I stuffed up, it's all my fault, I did this, I did that. That's all I want to say.
That's really powerful, Ben. Thank you so much for that. And it's important, listeners, yes, take accountability, but don't beat yourself up forevermore. If you need to apologize, then do so. Take accountability for what's necessary, improve, and then draw a line in the sand, and then move forward with your life. It's very, very good advice from Ben there. So thank you, Ben. Thank you so much for sharing your story, your advice, and what you've learnt. And I'm really, really excited for you in the future, because I think it starts now. You've had 2 years of hell, and now I believe your life can truly begin with you moving forward, hopefully in a way where you can slowly but surely start to understand there are other options out there for you who are going to be what I believe to be more authentic. So thank you again, Ben, and good luck in the future.